Today we have Louise Dunlap, who is a longtime Sangha member um, and a dear friend of mine. And I feel so happy I've been able to be a little bit on Louise's journey with her. And Phoenix, who Louise is going to introduce Phoenix, but I can't tell you how excited I am that Phoenix is here with us today. So I will introduce Louise. I do want to just mention up front, I'll mention it again. If you know you would like to be in the BIPOC Dharma sharing room, feel free to text me or message me in the chat, or you could also put a B in front of your name, just for short for BIPOC, and we'll have the opportunity to do that again later. So, Louise, who many of you already know very deeply because it's always a gift to be in Dharma sharing with Louise, is a writer, educator, and a longtime earth holder and member of the Order of Inner Being. She has written this beautiful new book called Inherited Silence: Listening to the Land, Healing the Colonizer Mind. And it, I'll just say from reading it, it's part memoir, part deep soul searching, part uh, resource for all of us. Um, and we will put in the chat how to connect with Louise and her book, as well as Phoenix and her work. I will mention it a few times. Um, Today we're offering Donna directly to Phoenix. Louise would like any Donna you would send to her to go to Phoenix and her work, as well as, of course, the Earth Holders. And I will put all those links in the chat as we begin. So, without any more delay, welcome Phoenix and Louise.
Wow. Thank you, Nomi. It's wonderful to see all the faces. I hope you will everyone will take a chance to look at the smiles and um, see the continuation of our wonderful teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, out on the screen. And I asked to be able to introduce Phoenix myself because I've known her and she's been in my life since about 2016. And very special person in my life. So I just wanted to make this introduction. J. Phoenix Smith is who I'm introducing, and I got to know her at a Veterans Day writing retreat that was held in the Redwoods in California, Northern California, where I live now, and she did live then. And it is held as a continuation of Thay's workshop that he used to have for veterans. And wonderful teachers, Maxine Hong Kingston and Wendy Johnson. And we met and got to know each other at that retreat. It was the weekend, that particular one, it comes more or less every year, but that particular one was within days after the announcement of election results in 2016. So we were all pretty worried about what was going to happen to the environment, to social justice in the United States with the president that was coming in at that time. So later, Phoenix and I got together in another writing group, and I got to watch her work develop, and I got to see what was going on in her mind as she developed the Alliance for Ecotherapy and Social Justice, which you'll hear more about this morning. And I got to see how so many of the issues that we are concerned with in Earth Holders were the issues that Phoenix was working on. because her work brings together the environment, the earth, and the social justice issues, and which we know, we have learned in Earth Holders are this is you can't really address one set of issues separately from the other. So that was wonderful to have that connection. Later, I personally benefited a lot from Phoenix's presence when I was working on my book and the issues about my own ancestors and the land that they had settled that I worked on in my book. So Phoenix is not only an ecotherapist, but she is also a longtime practitioner in the Orisha religion. And you'll hear more about that as we go on with what we're going to do in a few moments. Yeah. So as I worked on the issues of my book and worked with Phoenix closely about ancestors, and I started to watch somebody, a younger person, I would say, sort of entering her own as a thought leader, to the point where I'm really so proud every time I look at the website. and also, I want you to know, and we've put it in the chat too, she spoke on a podcast recently, a national podcast called Upstream, which brings together thought leaders that can help us with the current times. And what Phoenix had to say there was so beautiful and cohesive and so aligned with our interests here in Earth Holders that I thought you would want to know about this. So we put it in the chat also. So besides all of this, Phoenix has become what I would call a Dharma friend. And she was still living here at the time that Thay passed, and came to see me to say goodbye, actually. And it was actually a wonderful time for us to exchange what was on our hearts about Thay's passing, something that I know we all had to do with each other, because it was hard and also wonderful to try to be Thay's continuation. So I am introducing Phoenix as part of that, and I want to. I hope we're going to have a good time together. What we hope to do here is we are going to start with our usual guided meditation, but it will also include a prayer in Phoenix tradition. I just have to mention, she has been an ordained elder in the Lucumi practice of the Orisha religion for 16 years, almost 16 years. So that's elderhood, and it's really what we're going to be exploring, how that's related to our practice. But we want to start with prayer and a guided meditation, because we're going to be talking about some things that are very hard to hold. Our history as a culture here in the United States and worldwide, what colonization has done to people, and what it has done to the earth, things I wrote about in my book. So we'll be talking about those things. We'll be having a sort of a dialogue between the two of us, and then we'll go into Dharma sharing. And we will hope to have a little time at the end for some questions and answers, if you have them. So that's what our program will be. So Phoenix, you are going to start with a prayer in your tradition. And if you would like to say something after all of this, about, put your voice out here for us. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Louise, and thank you to everyone for inviting me. I feel so honored to be invited to this beautiful community. One of the things of many things that I've been taught and I've learned from elders in my tradition, as Louise said, whenever we engage in dialogue or conversation around the traumas that have happened to us and to the earth and to other communities, it's important that we ground ourselves in the sacredness of prayer and meditation, because we are all descendants of all of this, whether we are descendants of those that were victims of genocide or slavery or displacement or harm in any way, or descendants of those that were the colonizers that have the privilege. All of us have been harmed, no matter what our position is. We've been harmed in different ways, but the commonality is harm. But we also have the commonality that we have the opportunities to heal and the opportunities to stop the cycles of harm. So that is what brings us together. And so I would like to start with the traditional Lucumi prayer that we call a Moyuba, M-O-Y-U-B-A, that we start in any sacred ceremony. And we always start with water, the sacredness of water. One, we give thanks for having access to water. And if you have water, please hold it up. We give thanks to having access to fresh water and all the many benefits that fresh water does for us, for our physical bodies, for our mental bodies, for our spiritual bodies, for our communities. We give thanks for water that is able to nourish us and is able to nourish the more than human world, including the ancestors that are in the earth. And so the first thing we do is we do libations. And so I will start and do libations, and then I will say a prayer that starts with the religious language, which is called Lucumi. And then I will offer some prayer in English. And then I will just invite you, if you would like to say the name of a beloved ancestor, you can say their name, you can just write their name in the chat. A beloved ancestor of yours that maybe is the person that was the first person to able to help you connect to the earth in a very loving and peaceful way. So I'll start with the libation. Tutu omi tutu ona tutu ile tutu ache tutu tutu laroye tutu egungun. Kosi ku kosi ano kosi iyo kosi ofo kosi idina kosi akobo kosi fitibo ari kubabawa. Mo yubo lo dumare, mo yubo lofi, mo yubo lo run, mo yubi ile ogere, mo yubo bobe gun and belese ola dumari o lura o run. And if you have ancestors that you want to come off mute right now and just everyone just say their names, you can say their names. I'll start. Ibae bae tenu. Keep calling their names. Ibae bae tenu.
Eugene Hefner,
Ibae bae
Annie
tenu.
and
Ibae
Papa,
bae tenu. Iwakmensi.
Amen.
Ibae bae tenu.
Louis
Ibae
Mercer,
bae tenu.
Cynthia Solis Williams,
Ibae bae tenu.
Zebedee Williams,
Ibae bae tenu.
Susan Harrington.
Melita Lewis,
Ibae bae tenu.
Willie Mae Chapel,
Ibae bae tenu.
Elijah Frazier,
Ibae bae tenu.
Annie Mae Frazier,
Ibae bae tenu.
Clara Virginia Williams,
Ibae bae tenu. Ibae bae tenu.
Oberlegum.
Ibae bae tenu. And we say Ashe. Thank you so much for calling their names. Now they are here with us in this space, and we give thanks for all of their blessings. And so I would also just like to say a brief prayer to ground us in today. We call upon the spirit of Thay, beloved ancestor, We call upon the spirit of light and love and healing, and we ask for our beloved ancestors' support in this time of great transition, of great instability. We ask that you bring to us in the form of dreams, in the form of gifts, in the form of healing, in the form of wisdom. Bring to us those things that we need to have inner solidity and inner stability so that we can heal from the harms that our ancestors may have done to the earth and the harms that we may have done, not only to the earth, but to each other. We ask that you help us to have a spirit of openness and forgiveness. We ask that you help us to learn how to practice interbeing as Thay has taught us. We ask that you help us and give us the teachers and the Dharma friends and the allies and the support to help us to join together in alliance to turn the tide of destruction and separation and fear and move towards love and harmony and cohesiveness and interbeing and peace and love for not only ourselves, but for our family, for generations that have not yet been born. We ask for your support and we give thanks for all of your blessings. Ashe.
Dear friends, it was my intention to offer a guided meditation here at this point, but I want to adapt that a little bit. I think we have our guided meditation. We can sit with what we've just heard for a few moments, visiting our breath and our bodies in our tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh. So for a few moments, let us sit quietly. with deep gratitude for the words spoken and for your presence in this beautiful Zoom room. And I think we'll move now into our dialogue that we're going to have. I'm going to ask Phoenix the first question. And so it feels a little strange to move into this dialogue after such a deep experience. So I'm going to move slowly. Phoenix, it's hard to think about this. Alongside your day job in public health, you are involved in 2 lines of spiritual healing work for the earth and for the people of earth that I think the earth holders will want to know more about. So could you tell us a little bit more about what ecotherapy is and how you came to found the Alliance for Ecotherapy and Social Justice? And then could you, or before that, if you want, could you also tell us a little about your longtime experience with the Orisha religion? And as I said before, I know you've been ordained for well over 15 years. So start with whatever you want and see if you can just tell us a little bit about this background, because this is very important to us.
Yes, thank you so much, Louise. I want to first acknowledge where I am physically situated and located. So the Zoom background is the Anacostia River, and I am on the land of the Piscataway people in Washington, D.C. I moved back here after living 17 years on the lands of the Ohlone and Miwok people in Northern California in the Bay Area. So I will start with the Orisha religion that I practice, because that is what led me to the field of ecotherapy. So I grew up in a Black American household in the South, in San Antonio, Texas, and in a military family, several generations of military members. And in my family, there was a lot of wounding from war. You can imagine if you have generations of family members that were veterans. And so there was a lot of wounding from war. There was also a lot of wounding from the mixed ancestry I have of African and Indigenous on those lands. And so I grew up really seeking a way out of pain and looking for peace. And my ancestors led me back to West Africa via Cuba to the Yoruba religion that in Cuba is known as Lucumi. It is an oral tradition. It is an initiatory tradition. You learn through one-on-one work with an elder. This is not something that you can read in a book or go to a Western school for. It really is a one-on-one work with an elder. And I just want to give a shout out to a couple of spiritual friends that I see that are here to support me as well. One is my friend who is also an initiated priest in the tradition, Golden, who is here. I want to say thank you and alafia for coming. And I also want to say alafia to a couple of my godchildren that I've been leading and guiding spiritually, Lorena and Franny, who are here. So I see y'all. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you so much. But through the tradition, I discovered my connection to nature. I did not grow up in any way where I went camping or fishing. I did not grow up that way, but it was being through the tradition that I was able to, one, finally have a name for different aspects of the natural world. So the Orisha are different deities in nature, and they all have names. So the river, like the Anacostia River behind me, is known as the sacred goddess Oshun, Ochun or Oshun. She is the goddess of healing, of love, among other things. And the ocean is known as the goddess Yemaya, that is very well known in Brazil. If we have anybody from Brazil here on this call, through Candomblé, as they do an annual beautiful ceremony for Yemaya, is the goddess of the ocean, and the mountain is known as Obatala, and the forest, Ogun. So I was finally able to be able to create a deep relationship with different aspects of nature that not only help to raise my ecological consciousness, but through ritual and through ceremonies that have been passed down for over 500 years, even in the midst of the slave trade, the ancestors were able to hold on to these traditions. I am here now because of that. And that is what gave me sort of the language and the ability to really deepen my connection and really start to experience interbeing, right? And through this work, I was initiated in 2008. In my lineage, for the year that you're initiated, there are certain taboos that you have to observe. One is I had to wear white every day. Other people could not physically touch me. I couldn't be out at night. Had a lot of things that I couldn't do. But one thing that I could do was I could be in nature. And I started having a series of experiences. Some of them were spiritual, mystical experiences that when I would connect with nature, that led me eventually to the field of eco-psychology that I just found during my year of initiation where I couldn't go out. I discovered eco-psychology and ecotherapy. And eco-psychology and ecotherapy is a Western view that shows that our Western psychosis, I will say, the Western culture that posits that we can take from the earth, that in destroying the earth, that is how civilization can be advanced, that has resulted in a lot of mental and spiritual and political imbalances in the world. Eco-psychology posits that is a result of us being separated from nature, our spirits being separated from nature, our psyches being separated from nature. And this is not new because this is what Thay has been teaching for many years. He just says it's interbeing, right? But Western psychologists call it eco-psychology. And so ecotherapy are nature-based practices that help us to transition from the Western capitalist mindset that says that we are separate from nature, that has created economies and institutions and politics that are ones of harm and destruction. It helps to provide practices to help us heal from that separation. And some of the practices have been practiced for many years. Horticulture therapy is an ecotherapy, various animal-assisted therapies, equine therapy, working with horses. We know that horses are very powerful beings that can help people heal from trauma. We've seen pets and dogs used specifically now when we have such an increase in violence in the United States. Anytime that there's like a school shooting, you will see dogs come in for pet therapy to help calm people. And it also includes garden therapy, nature therapy. And over the past 15 years, there's been a plethora of research, right? Western research that has been championing these practices because in the Western mind, we need that scientific research to believe things sometimes. The scientific research, what indigenous people knew, what Thay knew, right? Knew that when we are able to have positive and peaceful interactions with the natural world, it has multiple positive benefits for us as individuals. One, it helps to calm our central nervous system, right? Two, if you're a person like me that experiences anxiety or rumination, we know that certain kinds of walks in parks can help calm the rumination to allow us to even be open to be able to meditate. Right? We know that connecting and growing our own food is healthier for our physical bodies, et cetera, et cetera. So I started practicing ecotherapy in 2011. And I have a 25+ year background in public health. My current day job, full-time job, I work with the CDC, Centers for Disease Control. And so, but I've worked in local public health departments for many years, and I'm familiar with working with traumatized communities and looking at various psychosocial interventions that help people heal. So in 2020, I created the Alliance for Ecotherapy and Social Justice after practicing ecotherapy through teaching and through one-on-one, in addition to always having another full-time job, because I found that the field of ecotherapy and ecopsychology is still very narrowly focused on the individual, just hyper individualism, and continues to just want to place nature on top of Western psychotherapies that aren't accessible for most people, and definitely aren't accessible for many people of the global majority, Indigenous people, Black people from all over the world, Asian people, Latino people, etc. So through this work, I've created a framework called Liberation Ecotherapy, where we specifically focus on community-based ecotherapy. So this is not just an individual practice where a person who is a licensed therapist just takes a training and kind of adds ecotherapy on. No, we focus on doing liberation ecotherapy in communities, in groups, specifically with communities have been the most impacted by the harm to the earth and to social and political injustice. And the model that I use, a community model, is also not new. It's models that are used all around the world in public health. They're called community health workers that work in various aspects. Sometimes they provide health education. And like with the mental health epidemic that's happening all over the world, you can look at models in places like Zimbabwe, where they train grandmothers in basic mental health strategies to go meet people in the community in a park and provide kind of sort of a peer psychosocial counseling. So this model is something that is rooted in communities, in peers, and in community-based work. So I'm very excited to say that through this work, Oakland is giving us a small grant to launch a training program, a curriculum that I created on liberation ecotherapy to train people that are essential workers within the city of Oakland to be able to become liberation ecotherapists, to provide that mental health, psychosocial support in nature to people in the community. So one of the things I want to just give thanks to Louise for, when she said she's been witnessing me as I've been kind of creating this model and seeing how I could do this work. And the idea for the Alliance came to me from my ancestors through a dream. It was a specific dream. I've always had a very active dream life, but in 2020, I had this dream, this download where my ancestors just kind of really just gave me the framework. And I know it was my ancestors because one of my great aunts, her name was Clemmy Grant, who helped raise me, came to me in the dream and talked to me about it. So this work also for me is ancestral work and ancestral healing work, as my ancestors came to me in the dream and really helped me come up with this kind of idea. And that is where we are today. In the summer, in May, I will be in California, in Oakland, and we will be launching our first cohort with people that are doing work such as working in Head Start programs, working with elders, working with youth in the community. They don't necessarily have therapy licenses, but they are trained as community health workers and run groups. And so this is my way of really trying to turn the tide of destruction and bring in the healing of ecotherapy and eco-spirituality and public health to serve communities all over. And it's definitely in alignment with Interbeing and with Thay's teachings. And I want to just say that over and over again to give thanks for the wisdom of teachers such as Thay. He was the first Buddhist teacher I ever heard about in my life as a little girl growing up in Texas, because my father was involved in civil rights. And I learned about him because of his work with Dr. Martin Luther King. Like when I was talking to Louise yesterday, I was like, he's the first Buddhist person I've ever heard about. I was a child because of his socially engaged Buddhism and his work with Dr. Martin Luther King. That is, I didn't realize that before, but I realize that now. And just how deep the teachings of ancestors can live within us, that sometimes we don't even know. We think something may be new to us, a new idea, and we don't even know that it's something, a seed that was planted. And I will say it's a seed that Thay planted within me as a little child growing up in Texas, who would had no idea that I would end up in the place and the position that I am in today. So thank you. And I'm going to ask Louise a question, but I don't see her on the screen. Did she drop off accidentally, Nomi?
She was here 1 second ago. Let's see, Louise, are you
Yeah,
here?
maybe she had a tech issue.
Yeah, she was just here a second ago, so she must be coming back. I don't know if you want to share more with us while we wait for her, or if
Sure. Well, one of the things that, you know, my relationship with Louise, I have to say, the way that we've been able to connect and build a friendship is a result of my ancestral healing work. If I hadn't really delved into uh, the legacies that my ancestors left, and some of them were not good, many of them were not good, legacies of dysfunctions of behaviors and of ways of being in the world. I really had to look at those things. And in doing that work, and in our religion, we do that work a lot through ritual and through prayer. Because in Yoruba traditions, we believe that our ancestors are our biggest cheerleaders. They want us to succeed in life. And they want us to not repeat the mistakes that they made. And we believe that they're actively involved in the day-to-day lives of their descendants. Like these beliefs predate me. They go back thousands of years, where ancestors in many cultures, not just African cultures, many Asian cultures, Latino cultures, where we honor ancestors in various ways. And so that's the foundation of the practice. And through my work with my ancestors, it allowed me to be able to be open to have a relationship with a privileged white woman who's older than me, whose ancestors were colonizers and who perpetuated genocide. It allowed me, the ancestral healing work allowed me to find a place of peace and commonality with Louise. I know that I would not have been able to have this kind of relationship if I hadn't have done my work with my ancestors, right? I did not grow up honoring ancestors other than in my culture growing up. We did visit the cemetery regularly during our ancestors' birthdays, and we would put flowers, but that was the extent of it. It didn't go any deeper than that. And so through me excavating sort of the things that I inherited from my ancestors, and, you know, Western psychologists call these things in different ways. So for Indigenous people, Indigenous psychologists will use the term post-colonial traumatic syndrome, right? And Dr. Joy DeGruy calls it, you know, post-slavery traumatic syndrome for Black people who are descendants of slaves. And we can say that we're all like dealing with post-colonial syndrome as people just living in Western world, as we see climate change really kind of decimating all of our communities at one level or another. But it was through the ancestral healing work that I was able to build a relationship with Louise. And And also, I just want to mention, because she said she witnessed me, the importance of witnessing and building alliances cross-culturally and intergenerationally is very, very important, to have someone that can say that they've witnessed you, right? And that it can work both ways, because I've witnessed Louise on her journey with her ancestors as well. Is Louise back?
She is.
Okay. Hi, Louise. I don't see her though, if she is here.
I don't either, but she told me she's back. I can see her name. So, Louise, when you start to speak, you'll come forward.
Well, I am
There
here.
she is. Great, great.
The electronic energies were dazzled by what Phoenix was saying, and everything just went off.
Well,
Everybody froze and I restarted.
all right, great. So can I ask you the question now, Louise?
Yes, you can. Mhm.
Okay, so I know from your book that you come from a culture that doesn't take ancestors very seriously, and yet you wrote this book about them. Could you tell us what led you to do that?
Yeah. Well, I'm so great. I think Thay was part of what led me to do that, and also other teachers from other cultures, because it seems like most cultures in the world, certainly the ones that I know from West Africa and Asia, all revere and honor their ancestors in a way that, you know, even though genealogy is America's second favorite hobby, even though that's true, it isn't we aren't necessarily in connection and in karmic connection and healing connection with our ancestors in this culture. So I had some early experience before I decided to write the book. And when I wrote the book, my goal was to look into the history of this beautiful land that my family had held for 5 generations, which they acquired in a time of genocide, not through any direct action, but through all the just through the system of colonialism. They were able to buy this land in the 1800s, in the 1800s. So I wanted to look into the history of the land, but I knew it was going to take me to the history of the colonization and the violence in this place. And it did. It took me very deep. I learned for sure that colonization was behind the extractive mentality and what has led to climate disruption. And I learned for sure that it was what has led us to this unbearable world of racist attacks and violence that we have in this country right now and in other parts of the world. So I had never been very attracted to these ancestors that I wrote about. I hadn't, like the distant ones, my parents, yes, but the distant ones, I hadn't felt any love or affection or connection with them. But my teachers, my spiritual ancestors were telling me they need healing. These people didn't participate for 6 generations in Indian wars without harm to their souls. They didn't keep silence as they did without harm to their souls, and they need healing. And I learned that from Thay too, that our ancestors can be healed by healing ourselves. And I had a very wonderful a Dharma friend who read my manuscript at an early stage and asked me some questions like, you're writing about manifest destiny. Do you see any of that in yourself? And she was right. Of course, it's in myself, and healing in myself can heal my ancestors. And I began to build relationship with those ancestors. And Phoenix was a great, I don't want to go on and on about this because it's another story that I will tell at another time about the writing of the book. Because what I'm really interested in or talking about here is most of us have been colonized to the extent that we don't believe in these pagan ideas about ancestors anymore. And yet, or I should say many of us, because I don't know everyone who's on this screen. I hope there are many more of you who have been moved and touched by our ancient teachings that we all had at one time. So I would like to get back. I guess that's about what I want to say to your question, Phoenix. But there's just one more point that I had the great good fortune of working a few times in small workshops with Malidoma Somé, the teacher from the Dagara tradition in what's now Burkina Faso, who came to the West and taught many people these things. And one of the things that he says in his book, The Healing Wisdom of Africa, our ancestors, once they have passed into the ancestor world, can see right away the harm that they caused in the world. They can see it right away. And they need to heal. They want to do everything they can to heal the harm that they caused. So from his point of view, they are with us. They are helping us, but they can't do it themselves. We have to do the work. So I thought, the whole long time I was writing the book, many of you know, it took me years. And I changed things a lot. I grew a lot while I was writing it. I learned about my complicity. I learned to see the colonizer mind in myself. And I believe that I hope you'll read the book and be motivated to do some of the same stuff and share it. Because I think it's one of the things we can do to change the energy field in this country, to change the energy. And I guess I want to bring it to the last question that we have, which is probably the most important and why you all came. In Earth Holders, we're really engaged in finding ways to support Mother Earth. And I'm wondering what you can tell us, Phoenix, and what you and I have figured out, that how we can get our ancestors to help us with this. How is there help, or is this just wishful thinking and my understanding of Malidoma Somé? But I do feel ancestor help coming through me as I become more stable in my efforts to work on these things. So what do you think, Phoenix?
Well, I mean, the Earth Holder Sangha has an amazing ancestor right now that's holding us all, and that's Thay.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you say you do ancestor work or not, by being in this Sangha, you are, by continuing the work of Thay, the great ancestor, right? So we can just start there and give thanks and give thanks.
Mm. That's beautiful.
The Sangha is called Earth Holders. What are you holding? What are you holding? What are we holding? So one, we are part of the earth. and ancestors are in the earth, literally. The stones are the bones of the ancestors. This is not metaphysical. This is science, right? The bodies decompose, they become part of the soil, they become part of the tree, they become the stone, right? So at that basic level, you've already started that work by being part of the Sangha, right? We know as spiritual people that it's going to take more than political change and policy change and economic change for us to co-create the new earth and cultures that we want. That the change really has to start deep within us. And everyone is not going to sign on to this, and that's okay, because we don't need everyone to sign on. We don't need everyone, right? You just need a percentage of the population, right? Like, whoever thought that we would be able to have this conversation? Me, a descendant of those that were enslaved and that experienced genocide, with Louise, a descendant of those that were colonizers. Like, my mother would never imagine that I would be able to have a conversation that was based on mutual respect and love. She would have never imagined that. She grew up in Jim Crow, Texas, my mother and father, right? Jim Crow that the Nazis studied, right? The Nazis came and studied Jim Crow to create policies and a system that destroyed Jewish people. They came here to study that, right? So you're already starting the work by being part of the Earth Holder Sangha, and you have the great ancestor Thay to lean on. So do you ever reach out to Thay, even now that he is continued on in spirit form, meaning literally, Thay, can you help me? Can you help us? Talk to him. And the same thing can happen with your own ancestors, and the communication can be more direct because you are the blood, you know, their blood lives within you. So I see it as a psycho-spiritual practice of remembering who our ancestors are, because we are them, they are us. And specifically, there are many different ways. One is just in how you live your life. How are you going to contribute to the healing of the earth? How are you going to stop the cycles of pain and harm that we've all inherited? Inherited Silence, the title of Louise's book, I'm sure many of us grew up in families, I know I did, where denial and silence was the culture and the norm, that we don't talk about things that happen within the family, the secrets, right? So the secrets of harm that we did to each other, harm that we did to the earth, it's all interconnected, right? So there's work here for all of us to do. And many indigenous wisdom leaders from all over the world are all saying the same thing, that our ancestors want us to engage them because they are here to help us in a spiritual way to be able to co-create a new culture based on mutual respect and interbeing. And everyone in your community or family are not going to be the ones to sign up for this. What I have found in my experience, my lived experience, and also my experience in working with others and guiding them, is that usually there's one person in the family that is that person that is going to be the one that's going to do the work of the ancestors. I am one of 5 children. None of my other siblings are engaged in anything like this. They don't want to hear it. But I am that chosen one in my family. And I have found through working with others, it might not be you, it might be your daughter or your brother or your cousin, or it might be you. There's usually one person that is open and sensitive to these ideas on a psychological and a spiritual way, and may have had experiences. Like, for example, my great niece is 5 years old and she was very close to my mother. My mother helped co-raise her. And in December, she went to my nephew and said, We need to put up the Christmas tree that grandma has. Grandma wants us to put up the Christmas tree. And I believe that my great niece was really communicating with my mother, that my mother was there with her, watching over her, right? And so sometimes the experiences are often, they speak to us through dreams. They speak to us through things that we may think are coincidences, right? And you see, oh, this is one of my ancestors connecting with me, wanting to reach out. And Thay, I remember reading a story where Thay talks about his mother visiting him as an ancestor. And that story, every time, even I think about that story, I want to tear up, because the thing about my experience and the little bit of experience I had with Thay's teachings is that they were all so heart-centered, right? And so he talked about his experience where his mother comes to him in a dream, and the tenderness that he feels and experiences from this experience. And so, I see that as her coming to support him and to show him that she still loved him.
Mhm.
So all of you are very fortunate that you're already in a community that you all honor one great ancestor, and that is Thay. And so it's an opportunity for you to continue to build off of that relationship with Thay. If you don't feel comfortable with engaging with your own blood ancestors, just start with Thay and ask him, what can I do, right? And then that may lead you to, oh, your aunt or your uncle who passed. You might have an experience that may seem like a coincidence, but as you engage with Thay and ask him for support as an ancestor, one of your blood ancestors might come to you in a way that fills you with peace and fills you with love, right? So those are simple things that I think that we all can do. And then because this is an Earth Holders community, how do we become engaged in action on behalf of interbeing, on behalf of wisdom and peace for the world, right? And in every community, there are opportunities for people to get involved in various ways. So, I mean, I'm just going to put a call out. The Alliance is a small grassroots organization. We need help. It's me and a small advisory council member. If you're interested in the intersections of healing and nature and mental health, come join us. All are welcome. All are welcome,
Wow.
right? And I'm very inspired by this Earth Holder Sangha, and very inspired by the work that people that call themselves white, like Louise, is doing, that she's not the only one. I see my friend AJ here on the call. AJ's another person. And, I had the opportunity to go be on Louise's ancestors' land in Napa. That is beautiful, beautiful land. And we did ceremony together for the ancestors, the indigenous ancestors of that land, and for her ancestors. We stood together on that land and did that together. And that was healing, not just for the ancestors, but for our relationship as friends, right? And I'm sure it's rippling out to our ancestors as well. I feel that, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be engaged where we are now, where I'm here talking about it. And so really, how do you build alliances with people that may seem very different from you out externally? But again, as I said in my prayer, some of us come from those that have been oppressed and experienced genocide and slavery. Some of us may have come from those that contributed to that. Some of us were stuck in the middle. But what brings us together is that, one, not only have we all been harmed by it, but two, we're here in the Sangha because we're seeking healing. And so how can we find the commonality in our healing to support each other? And one last thing, that in order for us to be able to do this work, and you all know this because you're in the Sangha, you have to have a spiritual foundation. This is not intellectual work or work that is divorced from the heart. This is heart-centered work. And because there is so much pain and woundedness that you will uncover, continue to uncover as we see things happen in the outside world, but also within our own families, we need to have a strong spiritual connection and foundation. In my tradition, we call it firmeza, inner strength. And through your meditation, that increases your capacity to withstand the blows of all the things that are happening to the earth that also happen to us. Through our rituals and through our prayers, it increases our inner capacity to be able to keep moving forward. And this is a model that we need to share with young people in our lives. Young